Cheon-Soso lies fallen, the ground stained with blood, as the Hwasan genius lifts his blade. How did a man meant to be far away become the sole hope? But to understand how the Academy arrived at this point, come back with me to the beginning. The heavy rain pours on the leaves, and the sound of water seems to be the only warning that hell is about to begin. Metal clashes forcefully, and sparks fly amidst the storm as blood begins to stain the ground. A scream of agony cuts through the air as a warrior is thrown backward, with no chance to defend against the blow. The blade pierces through the body with a dry thud, and life begins to drain away before a merciless enemy. Steel gleams in the mud, and bodies pile up as hope vanishes in the midst of that total carnage. A deafening explosion sends everything flying, and the impact makes the earth tremble as if the world itself were dying. Tang Yoo-Sung spits blood and falls to his knees in the mud, feeling that the end is much closer than he imagined. A warrior desperately screams that the enemies are already coming and asks if the leaders plan to flee like cowards again. The white-bearded elder coldly replies that the priority is to ensure their escape occurs without any problems. The two leaders stare at each other with grim looks, completely ignoring the lives being thrown away on that bloody battlefield. They plan to use their allies as human shields to buy time and escape while the rest of the army is brutally massacred. Unaware of the betrayal, the soldiers charge into the attack, taking their last breath for leaders who have already abandoned them. The enemy emerges like an unstoppable shadow and blows tear through the air, felling them one by one without time to react. Silence begins to take over the place, and only the sound of rain hitting the lifeless bodies continues to echo. Tang Yoo-Sung realizes too late that the surprise attack was a mistake and that death is right before his eyes. He wipes the blood from his face and takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of every scar he accumulated in years of useless fights. With his last ounce of strength, he raises his sword one last time, determined not to die without taking someone with him. The forest is plunged into darkness, and the glint of weapons is the only thing illuminating the path to true hell. A powerful technique explodes on the horizon, and the impact is so strong that trees are ripped from the ground like twigs. He looks at the blood-stained leaf and lets out a dry laugh, realizing that his entire life was just one big joke. Even with his body destroyed, he whispers to himself that he's not dead yet and tries to stand up one more time. Rage boils in his veins at the thought that he is dying to protect scoundrels who only care about saving their own dirty skins. He extends his hand to the dark sky, trying to grasp something he never had, while the rain washes the blood from his skin. He grumbles that the words of the rich always sound the same, and that the effort of those born poor never seems to be enough. Pain tears through his chest, and he vomits more blood, as his vision begins to fail and the world around him darkens. His gaze loses its sparkle, and consciousness slowly fades as he accepts that this is his sad final end. He feels that his time has finally come, and that there's nothing more he can do to change what destiny has written. His world ends there, in the mud, serving as a shield for leaders who never cared about his life. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls his name, and his father's face appears in a memory that glows in the darkness. His father says that effort never betrays anyone, and tells him to keep trying, training every technique until he achieves true strength. The voice insists that talent is born from those who train the hardest, but young Yoo-Sung can only feel a deep sadness. He screams that his father is wrong, and that he trained until he spat blood, but none of it changed the reality of his life. He complains that he ended up becoming just a sacrifice for the powerful, and that all his sweat was absolutely for nothing. For a man born with nothing, effort is an empty path, and everything he did was in vain. A strange floating window appears before him, warning that the connection to the control area had a system error. The system begins to reload the data, reconfiguring everything based on the memories he held in his tired mind. Yoo-Sung feels an impact and hears an enraged voice yelling that he's still an idiot who can't wake up early. A heavy punch hits the top of his head, and the pain is so real that he jumps out of bed in a fright. His father is there, standing and huffing with rage, saying that the sun is already out and he's still sleeping like a lazy bum. He looks around, utterly confused, feeling the bump on his head and asking himself what's happening. That stern face really belongs to his father, and confusion overwhelms his mind as he realizes he's home. He recognizes his old room and sees messages glowing in the air, saying that the area reconfiguration was successfully completed. The old walls and the smell of mold confirm that he has truly returned to the past somehow. He decides that he has already died once, and that now he just wants to sleep a little longer to escape all this chaos. He thinks he no longer needs to face bloody battles, and that perhaps this new world will be his peaceful refuge now. Lying there doesn't seem like a bad idea, but destiny has other plans for him, and the calm lasts only a very short time. His father delivers another broom strike and tells him to get up now so he won't be late for military academy enrollment. Yoo-Sung complains about the pain but smiles, seeing that his father's tough demeanor hasn't changed at all during this time. He pauses for a second and processes the information, trying to understand what that enrollment truly means for his future now. He wonders if he heard correctly, and if Cheonbong Academy is still the place where everything began in his previous life. The idea of returning to that place seems insane, but he glances at the coins on the table and decides to face it. He remembers that in this world, power is everything, and those born with a silver spoon always dictate the cruel rules. But now he knows he can change his level by training, and that the school accepts new students who are 16 years old. Everything seems exactly the same as what happened 30 years ago, and he feels like he's been handed a golden opportunity. He walks down the street and realizes none of this is a dream. Reality is raw, and the cold is very real. Not long ago, he was crying before a demon, but now, the weather is good, and he has a fresh start. His father tells him to become a master of martial arts, and to do his best not to end up mediocre. Yoo-Sung laughs and says he'll strive hard, remembering how he gave his life to the fight when he was still very young. He walks through the village and sees that nothing has changed. The routine is the same, confirming that he truly traveled back in time. His father throws him cold sweet potatoes to eat on the way, a simple gesture he remembered with much longing and affection. He still doesn't know how this happened, but he's absolutely certain he's been thrown back into his past. Suddenly, he sees something that makes him stop in his tracks, and his eyes widen in surprise and shock. He asks if his father can see the floating panel with letters in the air, but the old man understands nothing of the matter. His father just looks at him with a face that suggests he thinks his son has completely lost his mind from sleeping. He tells the boy to stop talking nonsense and run for the enrollment before the deadline expires, and he misses out. Yoo-Sung begins to run towards his destiny, feeling the energy of a young body he hadn't had in a long time. He finally reaches the academy gates, and memories of everything he experienced there rush back like a hurricane in his mind. He still hasn't gotten used to being short and small, but he knows he'll have to face the exam once more. He observes the groups forming and realizes this is where the division between the strong and the weak begins to emerge. The black flag is for talented heirs, and the white is for poor newcomers who only have the fee money. He knows that their paths diverge here, and the direct disciples will receive the best training while he remains in the mud. That line was the beginning of a life as a doormat for the powerful, but he looks at the black flag with determination. Other candidates discuss how the exam changes every year and the fear of being sent home soon. He smiles because he took this test 30 years ago, and although he failed before, this time he knows the secret. The instructor calls number 70, and Tang Yoo-Sung steps forward with a confidence no one there can understand right now. He sees numbers blinking in the air and realizes it's a timer, warning him he has only 30 minutes to finish everything. He comes face to face with Cheon Tae-gong, the Grand Master of the Academy, a man who exudes absurd combat pressure. The master asks what he's looking for, and the young man replies that he's just curious about the type of test. The other instructors watch the boy with disdain, thinking he's just another hopeless wretch who will fail quickly. Yoo-Sung calmly states that the test will be about blood vessels and acupuncture points, leaving everyone in the room silent. The master raises an eyebrow and asks what led the boy to such a specific conclusion about the current exam. He points to the dummies covered by cloths and says he noticed their shape as soon as he entered the test room. The instructors exchange surprised glances, unable to believe such a young boy noticed such small yet important details in the room. He explains that the size and width of the covered objects reveal them to be human models of different types and physical statures. The master asks what blood has to do with this and challenges the boy to explain his reasoning further. Yoo-Sung explains that to master martial arts, One must know the vital points that change depending on age and gender. That's why the Academy needs so many different dummies to ensure students train their precision on any type of target. The master admits the boy is right, and a smirk appears on the face of the old warrior observing him. He tells Yoo-Sung to show if he's as good in combat as he is in observation, and orders the test to begin right now. An arm rises, signaling the start of the trial, as the atmosphere in the room grows heavy with the tension of the moment. The command is given, and Yoo-Sung prepares for the movement, feeling the weight of the responsibility to change his history right there. He advances against the training dummies, which move mechanically and swiftly, attempting to encircle the young candidate in the center. He dodges the first blow with agility and realizes his reflexes are still a bit slower than he remembered. He barely avoids being hit and feels he needs to adjust quickly if he wants to survive this advanced training level. Using this small body is a challenge, but gradually he begins to feel the connection between his mind and his muscles. Although he is physically weak at this moment, he knows that every move he makes today is better than yesterday. He spins in the air and lands a precise kick, proving that a veteran's technique makes all the difference in combat. The wooden dummy reacts to the impact and attempts a swift counterattack, forcing Yoo-Sung to retreat to gain vital space. At the back of the room, another candidate is eliminated, and the masters comment that the sight is truly lamentable to behold. They explain that these dummies are expensive and were made to act like real people using high-quality spiritual energy. The goal is to give students a real combat experience, perfect for evaluating who truly possesses talent here. The dummy only deactivates if hit on the exact acupuncture point, making the test impossible for those lacking precision. The master states he chose dummies with varying points to eliminate luck, wondering if anyone will manage to pass today. He yawns, bored, and declares that if no one passes, they'll simply have to work much harder next school year. Yoo-Sung stares down the giant dummy blocking his path, knowing he can't win with ordinary brute force. He decides to use a simple bone manipulation method to dislodge the dummy's structure using upward pressure. He moves like lightning, applying the technique to the right spot, feeling the wood's resistance under his fingers. He uses the separation method to destabilize the target and create an opening for the final blow that will decide everything. The giant dummy falters, its structure beginning to fail under the unusual technique the young man is employing in the test. Yoo-Sung feels he's close, but the fatigue of his young body begins to weigh him down. He needs to finish this now. He continues his assault with a sequence of fluid movements that leave the observers in the room utterly speechless with awe. Each strike is calculated to destroy the dummy's joint without requiring the physical strength he doesn't yet possess. He curses mentally, realizing the dummy is still standing and that he'll need something more aggressive now. The elder recognizes the bone manipulation technique, wondering how a 16-year-old boy knows such an advanced method. Yoo-Sung knows that in a fight against multiple enemies, the secret is to eliminate the weakest first to balance the odds. He recalls the techniques he learned in his past life, and decides it's time to risk everything on one strike. The dummy is much stronger than him, so he needs creativity to overcome the current physical power gap. The master's eyes widen as he realizes what the boy is planning to do to the giant dummy before him. Yoo-Sung charges forward with everything he has, concentrating all his energy on a single pressure point on his target's spine. He applies the pressing method to the astrocytes of the spine, a medical technique used for healing, but one he's transformed into a weapon. The impact is precise, and the energy courses through the dummy's structure immediately and effectively paralyzing its mechanical movements. The instructors are in shock, unable to understand if he used his fist or some kind of forbidden magic to win there. He looks at his own hand, feeling the satisfaction of seeing his veteran technique work perfectly in the test. A victorious smile appears on his face as he announces he has completed the challenge that seemed impossible to all. No one can believe he used massage techniques to strike pressure points and disable an advanced combat dummy. The master explains that he used the bone fixation technique for offensive purposes, something that requires a deep knowledge of human anatomy. He calls this the power of creativity, something none of them had thought of before, and which changed the rules of the game. Creativity is the mark of a genius, and the master now looks at Yoo-Sung with an interest he has never before shown. He orders the boy to approach, declaring that the name Tang Yoo-Sung will be remembered from now on in the academy. Yoo-Sung enters the waiting room for approved students, feeling that the first step to changing history has been taken. He clenches his fist tightly, swearing to rewrite his destiny, starting with every choice he makes in this new world. He opens a famous acupuncture book and sees that his current knowledge far surpasses what is written on those pages. Even with the mind of a 40-year-old man, he feels immense fulfillment for having overcome this first major obstacle. Suddenly, a system notification appears, stating his strength has increased by 1 point, leaving him utterly confused now. He sees options for rare rewards like ghost pills and legendary swords that he only knew of through rumors in his past life. He realizes his life is truly improving and feels an enormous desire to conquer each of these valuable treasures now. He chooses the third eye of wisdom, feeling a strange energy course through his eyes as a new ability awakens within him. Someone bumps into him forcefully, and he recognizes Jang Gi-hoo, a legendary genius he knew would be his great classmate. The two stare at each other, and a palpable air of rivalry already begins to emerge, even before they exchange words. Jang Gi-hoo gives a friendly, yet heavy pat, asking what Yoo-Sung is doing just standing there looking lost. Yoo-Sung nearly stumbles from the impact, realizing that this guy's physical strength is something he must greatly respect. He pretends not to know the genius, offering a vague comment to avoid raising suspicions about his memories of the previous future. Jang Gi-hoo smiles arrogantly, saying he understands the surprise, as he's quite famous for his natural talents. Yoo-Sung knows he was one of the best candidates of his era, and replies with a polite greeting to maintain appearances. The genius says he's surprised to find someone interesting, and extends his hand to begin a friendship that might be useful. Yoo-Sung tenses, realizing he'll have to compete with this monster of talent from the very first day of academy classes. Jang Gi-hoo asks his name, and Yoo-Sung notices glowing letters above the young man's head, indicating he's level 9. He wonders what those numbers mean, and realizes he can now see anyone's power level. He confirms that Jang Gi-hoo is indeed a level 9 warrior, which explains the overwhelming pressure he feels from the young man. He introduces himself as Tang Yoo-Sung, and observes the reactions of the other nearby students listening to their conversation. He tries to understand if this level information is accurate and realizes that the third eye gives him an absurd strategic advantage. Things are getting stranger and stranger, and he wonders what his own current level is in this new system. He sees a level 9 guard and a failed student at level 2, understanding that the world is now made of clear numbers. He reflects that Jang Gi-hoo has the same level as a trained warrior, which shows the abyss between geniuses and commoners. He looks around and realizes that only the best have passed, but he feels that there's still someone important yet to arrive. Jang Gi-hoo throws himself onto a bench and relaxes as if he owns the place, unconcerned with the academy's etiquette. Suddenly, the name Cheon-Soso echoes in Yoo-Sung's mind, and a shiver runs down his spine as he remembers her. The red-haired young woman enters the room and claims she will be the best student in the school because she is the director's daughter. He knows she is the academy's heiress and that her reputation for being cruel to the lower classes is well known. She screams at Jang Gi-hoo to stop staring at her, and the tension between the two explodes in the middle of the room. Yoo-Sung smiles, seeing that she still seemed innocent 30 years ago, before she became the villain he knew before. She demands respect for her skills, and says no one can doubt her because of who her father is in that famous institution. The master observes the young one's interaction and seems pleased with the energy level this new class is demonstrating. He announces who placed first in the exam ranking, and immediate silence falls over the room. When the second place is revealed, the tension among the students reaches its limit, and Yoo-Sung knows the war has only just begun. The master confirms that Cheon-Soso placed third, while the useless boy took the top score. Gi-hoo explodes with excitement and shouts that he wants to fight the new first-place student right now. Soso seethes with rage at being surpassed by two newcomers, while Yoo-Sung tries only to go unnoticed. The bearded master interrupts the chaos, announcing that the official ceremony and heavy training begin early tomorrow. The sun begins to set over Cheonbong Academy, painting the sky with the colors of a new era. Gi-hoo yawns relaxedly, saying he just needs to wait for time to pass to show who's boss here. He notices Yoo-Sung is tense and asks if he's afraid of Soso's father. So suddenly shouts, "Don't say that on purpose, you black-haired brat!" Gi-hoo leaves laughing, leaving Yoo-Sung incredulous at the kind of companions fate has given him. The red-haired young woman sighs and announces she's also leaving. She bids him a friendly farewell, but Yoo-Sung knows that sweetness hides a ruthless future villain. Alone, he reflects on how yesterday he was on a battlefield dying, and today he is back in the past. He clenches his fist tightly and swears that, this time, he will make things much better. Day breaks, and screams of despair echo through the dormitories because time spares no one. Yoo-Sung realizes the exhaustion from the exam made him oversleep, and now he is terribly late. He runs as if his life depends on it, spotting the academy gates closing in the distance. Upon arrival, he freezes, seeing that he is not the only one who overslept. The elite guard roars, "What makes you late on the very first day of class?" The punishment is announced, and Yoo-Sung's face pales before the master's fury. The doors slam shut with a metallic clang, leaving the protagonist outside, in total panic. "I'm screwed," he whispers, feeling that his plan to be an exemplary student was already over. But a familiar voice calls him from behind, breaking the mood of despair. Jang Gi-hoo appears with a smile on his face, saying he perfectly understands the reasons for the delay. He philosophizes that a warrior needs good sleep to shine, and that individual effort is worth more than punctuality. Ji-hoo then gets into a stance and extends the invitation. How about a fight to pass the time? Suddenly, a mission system appears in front of Yoo-Sung, demanding he defeat the level 9 monster. Memories of the library flood his mind, reminding him of the basics of the Samjae sword technique. Gi-hoo prepares to attack, emanating a pressure that would make any beginner faint in fear. In the courtyard, the other students flee as he shouts, asking if anyone else has the courage to spar. Gi-hoo's reputation is that of a maniac who fought veterans every day since he entered. He stops at nothing, driven by a thirst for combat that earned him a dark nickname. Everyone knows him as the Infinite Demon, an unstoppable force of nature within the academy. In the future, he would become the Muram Dragon, the supreme leader of the Martial Arts Alliance. Yoo-Sung knows he is facing an insurmountable obstacle for anyone at his current level. The system warns that the penalty for failing is to have physical activities reduced to 0 indefinitely. He understands he cannot die again and accepts the desperate challenge against the genius. Even without knowing his own level, Yoo-Sung estimates himself to be a mere level 2 compared to that monster. Gi-hoo provokes him, asking if he's going to stand there or actually fight like the top-ranked student. With 30 years of accumulated experience, Yoo-Sung decides that his technique can compensate for the lack of raw power. He lets out a battle cry, "Bring it on!" And the battle officially begins now. Ji-hoo smiles and lunges with a speed that human eyes can barely follow. Yoo-Sung feels the air being cut, and his body reacts purely by survival instinct. "I'll go first!" the prodigy shouts, delivering a blow that sounds like thunder crashing down from the sky. The protagonist focuses, repeating to himself that he can do this if he uses his head. The clash between them generates a shockwave that violently kicks up dust. Yoo-Sung is thrown backward, feeling like his bones could shatter at any moment from that impact. Gi-hoo gives no quarter and continues the barrage of attacks, laughing as if he's merely playing. The sound of wind being torn fills the courtyard as Yoo-Sung tries to find an opening. He spots a gap in his opponent's guard and decides it's his only chance. With a swift movement, he attempts a counterattack aimed at Gi-hoo's vital points. The blow grazes by, and Yoo-Sung is shocked to realize his rival dodged with ease. A heavy punch strikes Yoo-Sung's face, making his vision spin and his blood boil. Gi-hoo uses a jujutsu technique to immobilize the boy against the ground with absurd force. With an acrobatic spin, Yoo-Sung tries to break free from the arm lock before his limb is dislocated. The two separate and return to their guard stances, panting but with flames in their eyes. Yoo-Sung feels the abyss between them and curses his weak body that can't keep up with his veteran mind. Gi-hoo stares at him and asks if he's hiding his true sword technique even while fighting unarmed. It's the turning point! Yoo-Sung uses the earth form to unleash the legendary horizontal cut. The impact connects, and for a second, it seems the giant will fall before the rookie's effort. Gi-hoo retreats, surprised, feeling the weight of an attack he didn't expect from such a young boy. But the prodigy recovers too quickly, stabilizing his body with a refined wind technique. He praises the blow, admitting that if it weren't for his Guan-Peng technique, he would have suffered serious damage. Yoo-Sung is in shock. How does a 16-year-old boy already master something he only learned at 40? His vision begins to darken, and he feels the world spin as exhaustion consumes his senses. Gi-hoo's gaze shifts from rivalry to concern as he sees his opponent collapsing in front of him. Yoo-Sung wakes up to a master shouting that he had to carry him there after he passed out from sleep. He rubs his eyes, still confused about how long he was unconscious that afternoon. Gi-hoo is nearby, observing Yoo-Sung with renewed interest after the intense duel. The system window still glows, reminding him that the mission to defeat his rival remains active. He wonders if this torment will only end when he finally manages to overcome that monster. Yoo-Sung looks at his own hands, questioning if he truly has what it takes to win. The master pulls him by the ear, shouting that the delay will not be forgiven and that hell has begun. He is ordered to join Gi-hoo to fulfill the severe punishment in the academy courtyard. The punishment is 100 laps of duck walk, an exercise that destroys any semblance of dignity. Gi-hoo's legs tremble, but he still has the energy to try and make bets in the middle of the torture. Yoo-Sung feels his muscles tearing and that he has reached the absolute limit of his body. He sees Gi-hoo pulling further and further away and realizes that the talent gap between them is real. Suddenly, an alert appears. He has surpassed his limits, and his physical strength has permanently increased. His vigor returns in waves, and he realizes that the system rewards extreme suffering with real power. The master watches from afar, doubting if this is a punishment or a secret training for the two. Yoo-Sung reflects that the harder he pushes himself, the faster his recovery and attributes evolve. A shadow crosses his path, and So-So appears to mock the boy's humiliating situation. Yoo-Sung really confirms he's being punished, too exhausted to retort to the heiress's jokes. She notices his gaze and asks, "Why are you staring at me? My face will end up with holes like that." He replies that she was just blocking the sunlight, which irritates her slightly. Internally, Yoo-Sung admits she's very beautiful when young, but quickly scolds himself for it. So-So smirks confidently and drops the bombshell. "Don't fall for me. I'm already promised to someone else." He immediately denies it, but she keeps laughing as if she knows something he doesn't. Yoo-Sung asks if the engagement is to someone from the prestigious Sakyondang clan, the Masters of Poison. She's surprised by how fast rumors travel, but Yoo-Sung knows this clan will soon be destroyed. So-So curses political marriages, revealing a sadness no one in the academy usually sees. He realizes that if this marriage doesn't happen, perhaps she won't become the cruel woman of the future. The third eye of wisdom focuses on her and reveals information he had never seen before. Now he can see everyone's exact age, a new layer of perception unlocked by the system. Yoo-Sung understands his proficiency is increasing, and he's leveling up with each new discovery. So-So warns that the mentors want both of them in the headmaster's office as soon as they finish their laps. He looks for Gi-hoo and finds him sprawled in a tree, resting as if nothing had happened. Yoo-Sung decides to test his new ability on the masters to see how far his vision now reaches. He sees the names Ma Peng-to and Cheon Tae-gong, but their levels still appear as mysterious question marks. As they enter the room, the atmosphere turns frigid. Being reprimanded by Tae-gong is any student's worst nightmare. The headmaster warns that the punishment is the price for their tardiness, and they won't leave until everything is done. He asks if they intend to be late tomorrow as well, with a soul-piercing gaze. Both deny it frantically, and the headmaster, surprisingly, calmly dismisses them after the scolding. However, Yoo-Sung receives a direct order to report to the headmaster's office early the next day. Masters comment among themselves that this class is interesting, especially the boy with a veteran's maturity. Tae-gong remains silent, merely watching the duo leave with a deeply analytical gaze. At night, Yoo-Sung goes to the training grounds, enjoying the silence and the empty courtyard all to himself. He remembers that, in his past life, low-ranking students like him couldn't even set foot on that sacred ground. To build a solid foundation, he knows he needs to train while he's still young and full of life. If he loses this chance now, he'll be condemned to be a useless nobody at the bottom of society forever. He wields a wooden sword and begins practicing basic forms with absolute precision. The system confirms that each movement is increasing his sword skill and physical stamina. Hours pass, and sweat streams down his face, but he refuses to stop until he achieves perfection. Suddenly, he hears voices and sees a senior student humiliating a junior, calling him a worm and a crawling creature. The aggressor orders the boy not to dare lift his head from the ground, trampling the poor newcomer's dignity. The man introduces himself as Gong Jindo and demands the boy do exactly as he's told. The victim begs for mercy, calling Jindo elder brother, which only fuels his rage. Jindo sighs with boredom, as if torturing the weaker ones is just a tiresome daily routine. He delivers brutal kicks to the fallen boy, screaming that trash like him has no right to call him brother. Yoo-Sung watches from hiding and realizes he mistakenly took the wooden sword belonging to this brute. Jindo's cronies comment on the new top-ranked student, asking which important clan he came from. They spot Yoo-Sung and order him to drop the sword, asking if he'd lost his mind for touching it. Jindo approaches with a killer gaze, but suddenly stops when he notices something in the surrounding environment. He notices that Headmaster Tae-gong is watching everything from the balcony and decides not to cause a scandal there. The Academy Temple remains vigilant under the moonlight, guarding secrets and rivalries that simmer in the shadows. Jindo gets annoyed realizing the headmaster is still watching the blue-robed newcomer late into the night. He orders his cronies to take the victim inside, saying he wants to have a private conversation with Yoo-Sung. The cronies quickly obey, leaving the protagonist face-to-face with the dangerous and arrogant senior. Yoo-Sung feels something very bad is about to happen, and focuses his vision on the enemy's level. Jindo feigns cordiality, introducing himself as the one responsible for clan meetings within the elite academy. He believes his political position and lineage make him the king of that place, above any law. Jindo asks which family Yoo-Sung belongs to, assuming he must come from a noble and powerful lineage. Yoo-Sung's silence is a response Jindo didn't expect, and the tension between them explodes. Yoo-Sung replies that his family doesn't matter and that Jindo looks like a ticking bomb of arrogance about to explode. The senior student freezes, a vein throbbing in his forehead at the audacity of the newly arrived boy. He scoffs, laughing with sarcasm, upon discovering that the top scorer of the exam is nothing more than a commoner with no noble surname. Yoo-Sung decides it's not worth wasting time arguing with people who only value their golden cradles. He turns his back and begins to walk away, completely ignoring the authority Jindo attempts to impose on him. Jindo spits out one final insult, calling him a country bumpkin and warning that he still doesn't understand how the world truly works. Yoo-Sung retorts that he knows very well what kind of school Cheonbong is and what needs to be done. Back in his room, he can't sleep, thoughts of Jindo's provocation and the academy's social inequality swirling in his mind. He wonders how the Gihu of his past life dealt with these types, concluding it was through sheer, unadulterated power. Yoo-Sung gets up and returns to training, determined to prove his existence through sweat and perfect technique. His legs tremble, but he forces himself to continue, knowing that every single squat is a step taken upwards. He resolves to secretly visit the training ground every night to evolve faster than anyone else. The next day, Gihu reappears, once again surprised to see that Yoo-Sung managed to be late. Yoo-Sung sees that his rival has already ascended to level 10, fueling his frustration at the vast power disparity. He desperately asks himself if there's any way to reverse this colossal gap between the genius and him. Master Ma Pengtu appears, stating that the only way is to focus on increasing his brute strength. He explains that strength affects everything, from speed to defense, and that Yoo-Sung needs to gain muscle mass. Pengtu mentions a method to destroy enemy techniques, a skill that could mean the end for Jihu. The master reveals he enjoyed their previous fight and will now teach the foundation of everything, the control of spiritual energy. Yoo-Sung begins his posture training with a bucket on his head, feeling every muscle tremble violently. The master roars that perseverance training is the only path to mastering the flow of internal body energy. The system shines once more. Yoo-Sung has surpassed another limit, gaining bonuses in both strength and spiritual power. He realizes that ki training grants far greater bonuses than the ordinary physical exercises he'd been doing. Pengtu is impressed to see the boy endure 2 hours of a torture that others abandon in mere minutes. He concludes that Yoo-Sung is a maniac who seems to revel in being punished and pushed to his absolute limit. The master decides it's time to show something real and asks the protagonist to accompany him for a demonstration. Yoo-Sung wants to continue a little longer to raise his spiritual level, but agrees to follow the bald mentor. On the way, they find So-So training, and the system shows that she is already a direct descendant at level 8. With a single devastating strike, the master cleaves a tree in half, showcasing the raw power of concentrated energy. He explains that if Ji-Hoo applies spiritual energy to his vertical attacks, Yoo-Sung wouldn't stand the slightest chance of survival. The final lesson is about focusing one's entire soul into a single point to inflict maximum possible destruction. Pung-Tu calls So-So to demonstrate the technique in practice, and Yoo-Sung braces himself to witness the true abyss between them. So-So immediately accepts the challenge, asking the master what exactly she should destroy with her strikes. The mentor suggests she use the Academy's meteor kick, while Yoo-Sung observes every single detail of her movement. She prepares, concentrating all her strength into her leg to showcase what an heir is truly capable of. The impact of the strike is brutal, beginning to crack the massive rock as if it were made of glass. So-So asks if her current level is already sufficient to reach the Phoenix ranking in the prestigious academy. The destruction inflicted on the rock makes it clear that her spiritual power is on an entirely different level than the ordinary. Ma Peng-To cuts short her excitement, warning that the path to mastering Ki is still very long. He hands a wooden sword to Yoo-Sung, stating that the weapon will help channel his trapped energy. The system glows, announcing that he has acquired his first weapon, granting bonuses in attack and spiritual power. Yoo-Sung realizes the sword will be essential for the techniques he used in his past life as a veteran. The master ends the physical training, announcing that the next lesson will focus on Cheonbong's 5 main techniques. They walk through the academy as So-So explains that many arts there were derived from legendary masters of the past. Suddenly, the senior Gong Jindo appears in their path with a group of followers surrounding the newcomers. He orders So-So to move aside, making it clear that his only interest is settling scores with Yoo-Sung. Jindo stares at the protagonist with disdain, declaring he has unfinished business with the top scorer of the exam. The senior claims he came personally because he wanted to forge a special bond with the school's most talked-about freshman. Yoo-Sung realizes he has been lured into an ambush on the bamboo road leading to the training grounds. Jindo provokes the boy, asking why he's so silent now that things have gotten serious. Protagonist coldly analyzes the situation, noting he is completely surrounded by the arrogant senior's cronies. He retorts that the senior seems far too prepared to deal with a mere student younger than himself. Jindo smirks, declaring that no one will interfere, for the others are merely there to witness his downfall. In a sudden, unannounced move, the senior attacks, catching the freshman off guard with absurd speed. Dust rises as the cowardly attack tears through the air, aimed directly at Yoo-Sung's stomach. The boy realizes the blow was aimed at a vital point and that the senior truly intended to seriously harm him. So-So furiously shouts, asking if Jindo has lost his mind for attempting such a dangerous attack within the academy. The aggressor merely scoffs, claiming an exemplary student should be capable of dodging something so simple. Yoo-Sung knows he would be in danger if not for his veteran reflexes and So-So's timely aid. He observes Jindo's tension, realizing the senior's confidence is merely a facade to mask his fear. The senior judges Yoo-Sung's stance as amateurish, believing the newcomer is ready to beg for mercy. The system activates an emergency mission: defeat Gong Jindo in 15 minutes or suffer severe physical punishment. Jindo advances with the Grand Unity technique, but Yoo-Sung blocks the impact with his new wooden sword. The senior unleashes a chain of attacks, attempting to overwhelm the newcomer's defense with brute force. Yoo-Sung leaps and dodges the blows with an agility that leaves all surrounding spectators impressed. Jindo is shocked to realize his precise attack struck nothing but the empty forest air. Protagonist counterattacks with the Grand Mountain's vertical strike, descending like a lightning bolt upon the enemy's head. The tip of the wooden sword strikes the ground with such force that the earth cracks between them. Yoo-Sung regrets not having perfected his spiritual power yet, but he knows he managed to intimidate his opponent with the move. He stares at the senior, ironically asking what would have happened if that attack had connected squarely. Jindo roars at him not to boast, and Yoo-Sung discerns the clear weaknesses in his opponent's fighting style. The boy knows that guys like Jindo rely only on easy tricks and constantly repeat the same ingrained patterns. Yoo-Sung recalls Jindo's fights from his past life and realizes he is far too predictable for a warrior. Every enemy movement seems to pass in slow motion before the trained eyes of the protagonist who return through time. Jindo is disturbed to notice the newcomer smiling in the midst of what should be a deadly combat. The senior attempts a desperate strike, but Yoo-Sung moves with surgical precision to avoid the blade's impact. Fear begins to grip Jindo as he realizes the freshman anticipates his every attack. So-So observes the fight and notes that, although Yoo-Sung appears slow, he is always one step ahead of the enemy. She wonders if the boy can see the future, for the technical difference between them is inexplicable. Jindo's followers remain in total silence as they watch their leader being dominated by a mere freshman. Someone comments that Yoo-Sung is slick as a snake, and that his true strength has been underestimated from day one. Jindo decides to abandon his refined technique and resort to an overwhelming vertical strike to end the fight for good. Yoo-Sung warns that predicting attacks is easy when you know the enemy's bad habits and focus your ki. The swords collide violently, and the sound of impact echoes throughout the academy's bamboo grove. The duel reaches its peak tension with both warriors contesting every inch of ground in a display of brute force. Jindo screams that he will truly teach the boy how to use the enhanced Grand Mountain technique. He leaps for the final blow, believing the force of gravity will be the end of the newcomer's resistance. Yoo-Sung takes a deep breath and concentrates all his spiritual energy into the wooden blade for the decisive strike. He spins his body with superhuman speed, preparing the technique he learned over 40 years of combat. Jindo descends with full force, pouring all his weight and hatred into that last desperate movement against the freshman. The clash between the two energies creates a shockwave that sends bamboo leaves flying all around. A cracking sound echoes across the battlefield, and Yoo-Sung realizes something in Jindo's defense has given way. The senior feels the impact vibrate through his arms, realizing his stance has been broken by the boy's attack. He remembers with panic a small crack his weapon sustained the previous day during heavy training. So-So's eyes widen as she sees that the tide of the battle has completely turned in a single second. Yoo-Sung wastes no time, exploiting the opening in the enemy's guard to prepare the final move of his art. Jindo tries to recover, but the protagonist moves like a ghost, slipping out of his sight. The senior strikes at empty air as sweat pours down his face. Realizing he has lost track of his target, Yoo-Sung reappears from an impossible angle, warning that the next strike will be the last Jindo sees today. He lets out a war cry that makes the spectators recoil in fear before the overwhelming aura he emanates. The Thousand Armies Swept Away technique is executed with perfection, striking the senior with the force of an untamable storm. Jindo is thrown backward, letting out a scream of agony as his defense is utterly shattered by the impact of ki. The veteran slams into the ground with a violent crash, kicking up a cloud of dust that blankets the entire combat scene. His body skids across the earth, coming to a halt at the feet of his own terrified followers, who now tremble in sheer dread. Jindo groans in pain, utterly unable to rise after receiving the blue-haired boy's devastating blow. The system confirms the mission's successful completion, and Yoo-Sung silently celebrates his triumph over the veteran. One of Jindo's henchmen considers attacking So-So to escape, but reconsiders upon witnessing the protagonist's true strength. Suddenly, a hand clamps down on the aggressor's arm before he can make any cowardly move against the group. Jang Gi-hoo appears, smiling, and asks how a veteran could stoop so low as to attack from behind. Jindo's follower stammers an apology, paralyzed by the intimidating presence of Yoo-Sung's rival at the scene. Gi-hoo tells everyone to be careful and asks what Yoo-Sung is doing standing there as if lost. They bicker about the path to the next class, with Gi-hoo joking that the rookie truly has no sense of direction. Yoo-Sung ignores the taunt, relishing the satisfaction of having overcome his first major physical obstacle in this new life. He reflects on the fact that he defeated Gong Jindo, something that seemed impossible for his 16-year-old former self. The boy recalls entering the academy as a mere trainee, destined only to be cannon fodder. Memories of the humiliations suffered in his childhood due to his lack of talent still burn in his mind. He admits to himself that there was no other place in the world he wished to be more than Cheonbong. In his spare time, he sought knowledge from other students, trying to unravel the hidden secrets within ancient martial arts volumes. A colleague is shocked to hear that Yoo-Sung wants to learn techniques exclusive to the Academy's direct disciples. The protagonist shows illustrations from a book and explains how the palm flower technique can be deadly if properly wielded. He confesses that, though he hasn't read everything, he has already absorbed the necessary knowledge to begin his true martial evolution. Yoo-Sung encourages his friend, stating with conviction that a trainee can indeed become as strong as the nobles. The other student gives a weak smile, lacking the same unwavering confidence that the blue-haired boy now exhibits. Meanwhile, some veterans observe Yoo-Sung's conversations through cracks, suspicious of his intentions and sudden growth. A master explains in class that the Academy's techniques have deep roots in the legendary swordsmanship of the Hwasan sect. Yoo-Sung raises his hand and interjects, asserting that their art is directly derived from the famous plum blossom swordsmanship. His classmates stare at him as if he's mad, asking if he's talking to himself or trying to show off again. So-So is annoyed by the boy's petulance, but Jang Gi-hoo seems increasingly intrigued by the rookie's bizarre knowledge. The girl shouts at him to stop mentioning her name and acting as if they're intimate in front of the other students. A veteran orders the trio to shut up and leave the room with their hands raised as punishment. Yoo-Sung notices that Jindo has spent the entire day pretending he doesn't exist, avoiding any eye contact with the group. The defeated veteran's silence is uncomfortable, but it shows that respect has now been enforced through brute strength. The protagonist realizes that other influential students are also starting to notice his presence and his extraordinary abilities. Gi-hoo slings his arm over Yoo-Sung's shoulder and asks if he's ready for the next round of intense training. They request a rematch from the master, but are told it's not yet the right time for official duels again. Yoo-Sung continues to act naturally, while encouraging his classmates to hold on until the end of the day's lessons. The sun begins to set over the academy, painting the sky orange as the atmosphere of tension silently builds. Some students comment that it's better to pretend they don't even know Jindo now that he's been humiliated by a low-level rookie. Yoo-Sung's colleague confesses that he envies the absurd strength the boy gained in such a short time at school. The protagonist observes the horizon, aware that each victory attracts more powerful enemies and situations far more complicated than Jindo. He knows that the path ahead demands far more than just physical strength to change everyone's cruel destiny. Jokingly, he invites his friend to train a bit more, keeping his spirits high despite the visible exhaustion on his face. Yoo-Sung humbly states that he is no better than anyone, and his only advantage is the effort he puts into everything. He declares that he will work harder than anyone, for being a warrior is the only thing he truly knows how to do. His roommate watches Yoo-Sung and realizes that his determination borders on the complete madness of a maniac. Later, two strangers with large straw hats and murderous auras cross paths with the students in the village market. The pink-haired woman and the giant man stop, staring at the group with a chilling gaze that makes their blood run cold. The man notices the Cheonbong Academy uniform and makes a sarcastic comment about the fate of those young martial arts apprentices. An elder thanks a disciple for help with the firewood and wishes them a safe journey for their next official mission. Rumors begin to circulate about the three dragons, the students who will surely pass all exams and dominate the next generation. Yoo-Sung realizes he has replaced Jindo in the rankings and that his life has completely changed after that single decisive fight in the forest. He walks through the academy's shadows, feeling the weight of responsibility that comes with being a primary target for envious veterans. Elder Cheon Tae-gong calls him for a private conversation, stating he has exceptionally high expectations for the boy's future. Yoo-Sung responds with respect, but his eyes betray that he's secretly analyzing the elder's power level with his system. The system fails to display Tae-gong's exact level, revealing only that he is a monster of unknown spiritual power. The elder announces that, at dawn, the students will participate in a practical escort mission to test their true warrior qualifications. Tae-gong asks why Yoo-Sung is straining his vision so much and if he's feeling overly nervous about the announcement. The boy apologizes and admits to being anxious, but the real reason is his frustration that his third eye isn't evolving faster. The master explains that the escort mission will serve to verify who truly deserves the title of Cheonbong's dragon or phoenix. Yoo-Sung recalls that being a guard demands quick judgment and total cooperation in unpredictable situations like bandit attacks or bad weather. Taegong reveals that 3 routes were planned, but unfortunately, the 2 safest ones were cancelled due to force majeure. Protagonist is shocked by the news, sensing that something terrible is about to repeat itself, just like in his previous life. The elder decides that all participants will be grouped into a single expedition to ensure the cargo reaches its final destination. The announced destination is the infamous Windless Country, a region controlled by the Mupung Pyeonguk Escort Agency, known for its danger. Yoo-Sung plunges into internal despair, as in his past, this route change never occurred, and the consequences were fatal for everyone. He has a grim vision of scattered bodies and dead horses, remembering that no one who went to that region ever returned alive. The boy knows that sending all the students together to this place will only result in a mass sacrifice of talented youths. Taegong explains that all the Academy's property documents and contracts mysteriously disappeared in a robbery the previous night. Fortunately, the contract with the Windless Country was with him, and it's the only one left to uphold the school's reputation. Yoo-Sung walks thoughtfully, trying to understand who the thief capable of invading the Academy could be and what their true, dark objective was. He suspects the attack wasn't a simple robbery, but something planned to force the students directly into a deadly trap. No one knows what's being transported in those boxes, nor why the Hwasan sect is the final recipient of this secret cargo. The elder mentions that the past incident was quickly forgotten, which further raises suspicions of an internal conspiracy within the Academy. Yoo-Sung wonders how he can prevent this tragedy, knowing that no one would believe a warning coming from a 16-year-old boy. The master warns that whoever doesn't participate in the escort will automatically fail, leaving the protagonist with no safe escape option from the mission. The boy accepts the challenge with a heavy sigh, determined to face destiny head-on to protect his classmates this time. He observes the final preparations for departure, feeling that time is running out against him and against the lives of all the students. The system shines again, indicating that the escort mission is now his primary objective to ensure survival and level up. Yoo-Sung rummages through his belongings and finds some gold coins he secretly saved for moments of extreme need, like this one. He realizes he can use that money to attempt a risky maneuver and kill 2 birds with 1 stone during the journey. The clinking of coins on the table draws the necessary attention for his manipulation plan to start taking real shape now. The boy presents himself before an imposing, bearded man who appears to be the chief of the escort guiding them through the country. Yoo-Sung confidently tosses a coin into the air, testing the reaction of the man who commands the security of the entire dangerous route. The coin spins on the wooden table, drawing the greedy eyes of the chief, who did not expect such an attitude from a mere student. The man places his finger on the coin and stops its spin, silently accepting the start of a conversation that shouldn't officially be happening. He asks if the boy came to discuss business about the transport of goods leaving the academy early tomorrow. The system identifies the man as Hwang Jung-ki, the feared chief of the Mupung Pyeonguk Escort Agency, and a high-level combat warrior. Yoo-Sung explains that next month, an important carriage will arrive from Korea, heading towards China via the region's main route. Jung-ki listens intently, surprised by the geographical and strategic knowledge the young blue-haired man precociously demonstrates. The chief accepts Yoo-Sung's request and orders him to bring all the necessary signed documents by dawn the next day. The boy formally thanks him, hiding his relief at having taken the first step to divert the carriage from the route of certain death. Jung-ki asks if he is indeed the direct disciple Tang Yoo-Sung, and why he is so interested in changing the escort's plans. The man says he won't ask the real reasons behind that bizarre request, but warns that the martial world charges dearly for favors. He reminds him that tomorrow is the day all the other freshmen will arrive for the mission, and that Yoo-Sung might be trying to cheat. The protagonist assures him that he doesn't care about the score, and only wants to ensure the cargo arrives without any fatal accidents. Yoo-Sung retreats, knowing the maneuver was risky, but it's the only way to avert the massacre that has haunted his dreams since his regression. Jung-ki watches the boy leave and whispers to himself that Yoo-Sung is definitely plotting something that could change the region's balance. But the old wolf warns that no one deceives his eyes, making it clear that Yoo-Sung's game is too dangerous for a novice. The protagonist maintains the icy calm of a 40-year veteran, ignoring the pressure as he focuses on what truly matters for survival. Suddenly, a soft voice cuts through the heavy city air, interrupting the blue-haired boy's thoughts with deadly elegance. A young woman with pink hair appears, asking to be excused, hoping she isn't late for the encounter that will change the fate of the entire academy. The world seems to slow down as Yoo-Sung faces the visitors, feeling an instinctive chill run down every inch of his spine right now. The Samjian system collapses, and green letters scream the name that haunts his nightmares, Yongchorang, with a completely unknown level and age. The boy's blood instantly turns to ice. He never imagined encountering this monster from the Hwasan sect so early in his new life. Fear tries to seize his muscles, as he can barely believe that fate has brought him face to face with his greatest tormentor. Yongchorang smiles curiously and asks if he is just another ordinary student from the prestigious Cheonbong Academy who crossed her path. She notices the white uniforms of the martial artists around, commenting on the striking presence of the students training under the school's banner. Yoo-Sung tries to hide his panic and asks if she met anyone specific from the academy, searching for any information that might give him a strategic advantage. Her answer is an enigmatic murmur that sends cold sweat down the protagonist's face, fearing the worst for his friends. She explains that Cheonbong disciples are easy to identify by the rigidity of their attire and the way they carry their wounded pride. The silence between them weighs heavier than sword steel, creating a vacuum of tension in the bustling city street. With a mocking tone, the pink-haired girl confesses that she isn't sure if Yoo-Sung even belongs in such a mediocre place. The boy just watches, processing every word as if analyzing the movement of a blade about to strike his neck without any warning. She suggests that perhaps he is just a little different from the others, a rogue piece on the board that has piqued her fleeting, deadly interest. Yongchorang's group prepares to leave, abandoning Yoo-Sung with the weight of a revelation he wasn't ready to confront. The giant accompanying her quickens his pace, stating that their work needs to be done soon, while Yoo-Sung wonders what that means. The sound of a spiritual hum echoes in the protagonist's ears. He grinds his teeth, feeling his own powerlessness before such overwhelming might. Even having grown much stronger, Yoo-Sung realizes with horror that he still cannot even read the true level of that girl who should be his age. Yongchorang's image, walking calmly, burns in the hero's mind, serving as a cruel reminder that the peak of the world remains distant. He decides he needs to find Yong-Wi immediately, fearing his friend might have fallen into a trap while he was preoccupied with his own plans. Elsewhere, Yongchorang's companion asks if Yong-Wi will be all right, showing a concern that seems strange for warriors of such spiritual caliber. Her answer is cold as ice, stating that the fate of others is none of their concern, and nothing should interfere with their mission. The man simply accepts the command, knowing that questioning the orders of that young prodigy is akin to asking for a swift death sentence. Yoo-Sung arrives at the outskirts of the martial area, and desperately knocks on the door of a humble hut, remembering he visited this place in his past life. He shouts Yong-Wi's name, hoping the silence from the other side is just a misunderstanding and not the sign of an impending tragedy. Looking down, he realizes the door is blocked from the outside, clearly indicating someone wanted to prevent anyone from leaving alive. Inside the hut, he finds Yong-Wi tied and gagged on the floor, eyes wide with pure terror, pleading for immediate help to break free. Shock hits Yoo-Sung like a punch to the gut as he tries to understand who would dare attack a student within the protected territory. With brute force and determination, the hero begins tearing at the ropes, promising his friend he'll get him out of there before the worst happens. The sound of metal cutting through the air echoes in the room, but the tension only mounts as Yoo-Sung realizes the danger hasn't completely passed yet. Suddenly, a stop command halts the boy's movement as a crossbow bolt embeds itself in the wood right next to his head. The bearded elder stares at the scene with judgmental eyes, asking if the terrible accusations he heard about the theft are truly real now. The traitor Gong Jindo appears with a cynical smile, asserting that he saw Yong-Wi suspiciously carrying valuable academy properties that very morning. He questions how a low-class student could possess such precious items, while the elder praises Jindo's dirty work for recovering the goods. The lie continues to flow as the villain suggests Yong-Wi wouldn't have the courage to commit such a major crime alone without someone's help. Master Chan Tae-gong demands to know what that means, falling perfectly into the web of manipulation woven by the envious red-robed disciple. Gong Jindo points his finger directly at the protagonist, claiming he always saw the blue-haired boy conspiring alongside the alleged thief. He insinuates that, coming from a poor family, Yoo-Sung would have every reason in the world to betray the academy in exchange for a few gold coins. The shadow of doubt grows in the hall, as the traitor wonders aloud why needy students would come to train at Cheonbong without ulterior motives. The atmosphere shifts abruptly when Yongchorang's silhouette appears in the doorway, making everyone present skip a heartbeat from the sheer visual shock. Yoo-Sung freezes upon seeing his nemesis there, wondering what on earth she's doing in the heart of his own academy amidst this chaos. A cry of agony tears through the air as a crossbow trap is triggered, revealing the conspiracy is far more violent than it initially seemed. An imposing man observes the students, noting with disdain that one of them carries a long-range weapon forbidden for warriors of martial honor. The warning of danger is shouted, but fright has already overwhelmed the senses of those who dared cross paths with the unwelcome visitors from the Hwasan sect. Their gazes lock in a dramatic close-up, where fear and arrogance clash in a silent battle of wills and spiritual power. Yongchorang draws her sword with calculated slowness, noting that the aggressors wear the local martial arts school's uniform with dishonor. The bald man tries to calm things down with raised hands, claiming he has no intention of fighting warriors of such martial caliber. Yong-Wi formally introduces himself as a mere Cheonbong trainee, trying to maintain his dignity as sweat trickles down his tense neck from fear. The giant from the Hwasan sect laughs at the situation and suggests that, as the road is darkening, they should rest at the poor boy's humble house. The brute's gaze is predatory, concealing a malice that Yoo-Sung knows all too well from the stories of the Plum Blossom genius's cruelty. The villain insists that the hut is sufficient and that, if they leave early the next day, they'll reach the city center without major travel issues. The scene shifts to dawn, where Yongchorang claims to have slept well, despite the precarious conditions of that shelter, which served as the crime's stage. She offers fake thanks for the hospitality, while the group prepares to carry out their charade and destroy Yoo-Sung's reputation forever. Her companion complains about a stiff neck, creating a mundane dialogue that terribly contrasts with the gravity of the political situation they are about to cause. The black-robed disciples observe everything from afar, realizing that the framing plan is proceeding exactly as Gong Jindo planned with his shadowy allies. The metallic sound of objects being moved indicates that the planted evidence is now ready to be discovered by the Academy officials at the opportune moment. Money and forbidden technique books are displayed, sealing the fate of anyone caught with such compromising material within the sacred walls. The man in the hat asks if they are truly heading to Yong-Wi's house to consummate the arrest and summary judgment. With an affirmative nod, the group advances, feeling that victory over the dropout genius is closer than ever in the hands of betrayal. Returning to the present, Master Cheon Tae-gong smiles and comments on how much Yongchorang has grown since their clans last officially met. She apologizes for interfering with the conversation, but the atmosphere in the hall freezes as Gong Jindo realizes his authority is being completely ignored. The elder laughs benevolently, saying she is too humble for her own good, and demanding to know the real reason behind her unexpected visit. Without hesitation, Yongchorang makes the formal request that makes everyone tremble. She wants to perform an infinite combat against Cheonbong's best students. The master recalls that she had already shown interest in facing his direct disciples, but her tone now carries a promise of total humiliation. Gong Jindo pales upon hearing about the infinite combat, knowing that this type of duel doesn't end until one side is completely destroyed. Tae-gong tries to politely refuse, claiming that the academy is currently facing serious internal problems with the theft of sacred items. The girl insists she needs to see Yong-Wi to collect a debt of gratitude, but the gleam in her eyes suggests something far more sinister. The elder warns her not to worry, as his own guards have already been sent to capture the alleged thief and bring him to justice. The sound of a spiritual impact resonates as a palm technique is executed, dispersing the smoke and revealing the brute force of the Hwasan invaders. The academy guards are thrown like rag dolls by an energy blast, proving that no one there is a match for the pink-haired visitors. Yoo-Sung watches the scene hidden, knowing that interfering against a Hwasan disciple now would be akin to declaring open war between the sects. The elder is shocked when Yongchorang reveals she saw everything that happened that morning, silently refuting the fabricated version by the traitor Gong Jindo. The truth begins to emerge from the shadows, repeating the words about the bloody dawn that the villain tried to hide with his cheap theatrical lies. She apologizes for eavesdropping, but categorically states that Yong-Wi is innocent of all theft accusations made against him. The master realizes that if a genius from another sect witnessed the truth, he needs to act fast before the academy's name falls into dishonor. Gong Jindo tries to protest desperately, claiming that the girl's testimony is ridiculous and that the physical evidence against the poor boy is irrefutable. Taegong stares at the traitor with a deadly gaze and orders him to prove his innocence and worth through his own combat skills. The elder proposes a real duel with steel swords between Gong Jindo and the visitor, hoping that the plum blossom will teach the foolish disciple a lesson. The glint of Jindo's dark sword reflects his murderous intent, as he realizes he has been cornered by his own failed political manipulation plans. He understands that both sides want to punish him and decides that his only chance of survival is to defeat Yongchorang at all costs, even if he has to cheat. His hand grips the weapon's hilt with desperate force, feeling that his entire life depends on the next few seconds of lethal blows. Steel tears through the air with a sharp sound of death, initiating the confrontation that will define the fate of all involved in that dark martial conspiracy. The bag of coins falls to the floor with a metallic clink, serving as the symbolic prize of a dispute now worth much more than mere gold. Yong-Wi is freed, and the items recovered, while Yoo-Sung watches his injured friend, feeling a contained fury that begins to overflow in his soul. The long-haired man demands a detailed explanation, wanting to know every step of the setup that almost destroyed an innocent's life within the school. The hero is warned that military officials are furious with the situation, creating political pressure that could erupt into a large-scale conflict. News spreads. The Hwasan swordsman has begun the infinite combat on the training grounds, challenging the honor of every warrior of the Cheonbong Academy. Yoo-Sung stares at the horizon with a shocked expression, realizing that the timeline he knew is changing rapidly and unpredictably. The sound of breaking wood echoes through the courtyard as another student is brutally defeated, proving that the plum blossom technique is absolute and merciless. The infinite combat is a legendary Hwasan method to prove the superiority of their art over any other school that dares to stand against them. Blades clash with a deafening clang, but the difference in level is so stark that the Academy's defenders can barely react to the attacks. Swords shatter like glass under the pressure of the invaders' spiritual energy, leaving the disciples disarmed and humiliated before the entire crowd. Yongchorang achieves 10 consecutive victories alone, taking down the best talents that the military officials had to offer in a short amount of time. The kneeling warrior represents the Academy's current state, broken, hopeless, and surrendered before a power that seems to come from another divine world. The pink-haired girl indifferently wipes away sweat, staring at the mass of students as if she were merely playing in a garden of useless children. She asks who will be the next to fall, as her foot crushes the pride of a fallen veteran who tried to protect his master's honor. What should have been a friendly exhibition turned into an emotional massacre after she gravely injured Gong Jindo to provoke the entire Cheonbong sect. Cheon Soso enters the field with eyes burning with determination, stating that while Jindo was wrong, the visitor's cruelty had crossed all lines. The heroine's combat stance is firm and majestic, creating an aura of hope that makes the students' hearts beat strong again for a moment. The bald master encourages Yoo-Sung not to fear rumors and to fight with everything he has to become famous and respected in the world. A motivational slap cracks against the protagonist's back, reminding him that the weight of the Academy's future now rests on his teenage shoulders. He is called one of the three dragons, the pride of the Academy, who must show the world that Cheonbong still has sharp teeth to bite enemies. Yoo-Sung reflects on the expectations he never asked to carry, feeling the envy and admiration of others like a heavy burden in his chest. The weight of responsibility begins to consume his mind, transforming his desire for survival into an unshakable will to protect his new martial home. His mentor orders him to find the last of the dragons and bring him to the battlefield, knowing their unity is the only salvation. Yoo-Sung races across the rooftops, determined to find Jang Gi-hoo before the arena becomes a graveyard of reputations and dreams shattered by the Hwasan sect. He knows the master is concerned about stealth attacks against the students, making the search for his rival even more urgent and vital for their defense. Back in the arena, Yongchorang's fist clenches with a murderous intent that makes the surrounding air vibrate with a sharp, deadly frequency. Cheon-So-So charges forward with incredible speed, attempting to close the distance to use her short-range technique before her opponent can properly react. The heroine's shield and sword combination is a rare sight, forcing Yongchorang to use divine reflexes to avoid being struck by the heavy impact of the weapon. So-So realizes with horror that her blows haven't even grazed the enemy's robes, who moves as if dancing between raindrops. The pink-haired girl asks if she can handle two blades simultaneously, raising the fight's danger to an unprecedented scale. The metallic clang becomes a symphony of sparks as their weapons repeatedly clash at a speed the human eye can barely follow now. Blood splatters onto the white stone of the courtyard, marking the beginning of the end for the heroic resistance of our beloved academy's red-haired disciple. The pace of the fight is frantic, with kicks and slashes blurring into a whirlwind of motion that defies the laws of physics and martial gravity. The ground cracks under the pressure of the combatants' feet, while the crowd watches in absolute silence, fearing for the fate of their last great champion. The veterans admire So-So's skill, noting that not even the senior students could last more than 5 blows against the Hwasan monster. Yoo-Sung's gaze is analytical and cold, observing every flaw and virtue of the exhibited techniques to find a loophole no one else can see now. The hero knows he cannot afford to lose, but Jang Gi-hoo's disappearance at the most critical moment leaves him in a desperate and solitary situation. The combat reaches its dramatic peak, with both warriors using every drop of their spiritual energy to try and overcome the other opponent's iron will. Yoo-Sung confirms that Yongchorang is as strong as he remembered, but her current youth makes her growth potential something simply terrifying to behold. Meanwhile, atop a distant rooftop, Jang Gi-hoo wakes from his slumber and asks why the academy is so silent and strange on this sunny day. A strange pink-haired fatty asks for directions to the training center, interrupting the lazy dragon's rest with a trivial and annoying question. The pompadoured hero merely observes with disdain, oblivious that the courtyard below him is transforming into a bloody, decisive battlefield. The invader insists he can't find anyone to ask, while the tension in the arena reaches a breaking point that will make the entire school's structure tremble. Yoo-Sung's system suddenly evolves, and he begins to see numerical power values. Cheon-So-So has 72, while Yongchorang's remains a mystery. He realizes that many surrounding students are numerically stronger than So-So, which makes her heroic performance even more impressive and noteworthy. The heroine executes the Cheonbong deflection kick, raising her power to 87 in a surge of adrenaline and refined technique that astonishes all present. Yoo-Sung notices the change in numbers and wonders if So-So will be able to overcome the barrier of martial logic to win this now impossible fight. The impact of the kick makes the air explode, but Yongchorang remains motionless as a mountain, absorbing the blow's force with an irritating sovereign ease. The villainess reveals that her technique can pierce any defense, making it clear that no shield in the world can stop her sect's sacred blade. So-So uses her last ounces of strength to unleash the Phoenix Legs, a final attack that burns all her energy reserves in a single devastating blow. The heroine's power value reaches 99 at the instant of impact, creating a spiritual pressure that makes weaker students fall to their knees throughout the hall. Despite the monumental effort, Yongchorang evades the attack with a minimal movement, leaving So-So horrified by the ease with which her supreme technique was completely nullified. The visitor praises the method, admitting it is powerful, but lacking the soul needed to confront the true path of the sword that she walks. She claims that every technique used by the Academy is merely a cheap imitation that pales in comparison to Hwasan's millennia-old plum blossom tradition. A close-up on her hand gripping the sword reveals absolute calm, as she explains that her clan walks a path where only the essential is needed. Yongchorang declares that Cheonbong lost its light by attempting to mix kicks with blade mastery, and promises to display true strength without such useless contrivances. The 14 Plum Blossom Hands technique is unleashed, filling the air with pink energy petals that are as beautiful as they are lethal to anyone who touches them. A cry of agony escapes So-So as the storm of slashes strikes her, leaving Yoo-Sung in absolute shock at the divine speed of the enemy's attack. The system's values remain blurred for Yongchorang, indicating she exists on a plane that spiritual technology cannot yet accurately map. Cheon So-So's body collapses to the ground, strengthless, marking the fall of the greatest warrior the Academy had to offer in that moment of total despair. The crowd begins to tremble with fear, and some even whisper that they should have trained with the Hwasan sect to achieve such an overwhelming and perfect level of power. But So-So isn't finished yet. She grinds her teeth and tries to rise from the blood-stained ground, driven by a pride that refuses to accept defeat. Yongchorang observes with curiosity, asking why she still tries to fight when she no longer has the energy to even keep her eyes open from exhaustion. The heroine calls her opponent a pervert for laughing at another's pain and tries to regain her combat stance, even as her muscles violently tremble from the extreme effort. She shouts that Cheonbong's warriors are swords that follow the light, regardless of age or the arrogance of geniuses who try to humiliate them without reason. So-So explains that plum blossoms grow stronger in difficult circumstances, and her power rises to level 10 in a miraculous and heroic spiritual awakening. The surrounding air chills abruptly as she reaches the second stage of awakening, startling even Yoo-Sung with the sudden growth of her spiritual strength in the arena. She unleashes the plum blossom torrent, but Yongchorang calls her clumsy and ends the combat with a swift, clean strike that makes the ground tremble upon impact. So-So's vision darkens, and she whispers that she can no longer move, finally accepting that her limit has been reached against the force of nature that confronted her. Yoo-Sung rushes to support his colleague, praising her effort and telling her she did an incredible job fighting for so long against such a sect monster. The crowd roars Cheon So-So's name in admiration, acknowledging that she was the only one capable of looking the enemy in the eye without retreating an inch. Yongchorang scoffs in boredom as the students challenge Yoo-Sung to be the next to fight, hoping the dragon can avenge the honor of their martial school. The villainess mocks the protagonist's humble origins, asserting that no one has yet managed to satisfy her desire for a true high-level technical and spiritual combat. She suggests that perhaps one of the legendary dragons might change everything, casting a predatory gaze that pierces the soul of the blue-haired boy standing before her. With an enigmatic smile, she states her belief that Yoo-Sung will be different from the trash she's faced so far, silently challenging him to reveal his true worth. The protagonist replies that he hasn't stated his name yet, but reveals he already knows who she is thanks to Master Mapungtho, preparing for their inevitable final encounter. Yongchorang realizes that his presence there isn't a coincidence, and that he is the very reason they've come so far to test the might of Cheonbong Academy. Yoo-Sung wipes his nose with disdain, adopting a relaxed stance that conceals the storm of power he's about to unleash against his greatest martial nemesis. Finally, Jang Gi-hoo appears, yawning and lamenting having missed the grand event because he was asleep, utterly oblivious that the Academy's fate hangs by a thread.